Hi, everybody, and welcome back to U.S. History. So today we're going to be talking about the war at home specifically. So what life was like here in the United States while people were out fighting. So go ahead and get your notes out and let's get started. So we were fighting in a total war. This is when a country devotes all of their resources towards winning the war. Virtually all factories in the United States were producing military weapons, supplies, vehicles, and every citizen that could was put to work, especially women. And a huge thing, we'll talk a lot more about this during World War II as well, is the use of rationing. People could only buy small amounts of certain goods, mainly things like gasoline, certain clothing items, meat especially. And they used propaganda to influence their countries. The activity you'll be doing today after the notes deals with propaganda. Now, propaganda is information used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view. So, a good example of that, let's pull some up. So, let's see if we can find a good one. This is an example of Irish propaganda. One of the major issues that led to the United States joining World War I was unrestricted submarine warfare and the sinking of the Lusitania, a passenger ship in which over 100 U.S. Citizens were killed in the attack. Now, the Lusitania was actually used as a major piece of propaganda in a lot of different forms of propaganda across the world, here in the United States, in Britain, Ireland especially, since that made up a major portion of the passengers and crew on board. So the social impact, starting with African Americans, W.E.B. DuBois was a major player at this time period, and he thought that African Americans should support the war and believed that if they did help with the war effort and participate, that would help lead to equality in the United States. And again, like we talked about back in Unit 2, the Great Migration, blacks to the north, and war created new jobs. The war especially opened a lot of doors for people because it allowed them into jobs that they weren't normally able to hold because they were African American. And the same thing was true for women. They began to take on new jobs, driving cabs, operating the railroads, working in shipyards. It's also important to note shortly after the end of World War I, the 19th Amendment was passed as well that gave women the right to vote. We talked briefly about that in Unit 3. But one of the new problems they had to deal with was a flu epidemic. The Spanish flu came to the United States, and it claimed millions of American lives and massively slowed the war effort. We'll talk a lot more about the Spanish flu in a couple of class periods. So some other new problems. Remember back in Unit 2 where we talked about nativism and the idea that people from places like Britain and that sort of thing were superior and that they were born in the United States? That has still continued in the United States. But during World War I, an anti-German hysteria just latched onto the United States, especially for German immigrants. They were kind of caught in a rock and a hard place. Do they support their new country or do they root for their family that is still in Germany? A lot of those immigrants were persecuted, and a lot of them tried to stamp out of their life so they wouldn't be attacked for it. Now, in terms of keeping support high, we have the Espionage and Sedition Acts. This made anti-war activities illegal and prevented the circulation of an anti-war magazine. Now, if memory serves, the Espionage and Sedition Acts were later declared unconstitutional, but they also continued to use propaganda to keep attitudes positive as well. All right, so that's it for notes for today. What you're going to do now is access the propaganda activity on Classroom. I'll see y'all next time. Bye, everyone.